Sharing the screen. Hari Om, everyone. Welcome to our 48th session of the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Let's get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam anusandathami Bhagavad Gita bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pratipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totravetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Vridaduhe Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So, we've been looking at the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We are almost coming towards the end of this chapter. We probably have just about 5 or 6 shlokas. You're not able to hear, Gita? Cannot hear? Very low, is it?
No. Sound is there, but internet kattai varudhu.
Oh, really? Okay. Now is it okay? We'll see how it goes. Okay. Thank you for the feedback. So we saw so far about all the qualities that differentiate us from a perfect individual versus a normal individual. We are trying to see how these properties play a part in how we act in this world. So last time in reflection, we covered shlokas 25, 26, and 27. So today we look at 3 shlokas of 28, 29, and 30. And the whole goal, what we're looking at here is how can I see the application of these shlokas in our own lives. So shloka number 28 follows the one in 27, where we saw how a person who doesn't have this knowledge of karma yoga, how he thinks that he or she is the doer of all actions. So then the question comes is, then how do I compare this with somebody who knows karma yoga? How would this person really look at the world? How does that person act? So this is the shloka number 28, where we see that tattvavit, that is a person who is a wise person. And such a person is, he who knows the truth, or who really knows how the world works and what is Brahman, and how is the universe come from Brahman, all that. So how does this person look at the world? So it says, such a person who knows the truth and who also understands that this whole aspect of Maya, with all the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, they have come from that absolute reality, Maya, Brahman only. So when those gunas have come, those gunas in the form of the senses are now really performing the action in this world, which is also nothing but made up of gunas. So when such is the case, then that person knows that that person is real. There is this aspect of the gunas, but he or she are not the gunas. So such a person is really not attached to the world. So here, I would love to hear from you. How does this word attachment play for us? I mean, why is it that we are so attached to this world? I mean, we are not acting that way, right? For example, the statement that I have here, that I am a witness. It is only the gunas that are acting. So then the question is, what makes us attached to the world? And what makes this person, who is a knower of truth or a wise person, that person is able to remain as a witness of the world? What do you think?
Likes and dislikes.
Likes and dislikes, yeah, that is true.
Then asubhava.
Aswabhava, yeah,
Those also play a big role.
In fact, yes, you are 100% correct. Those, we tend to, when, for example, let's look at, the shloka says, right, that guna guneshu vartante matva iti na sajjate. The person does not get attached. So for us, for example, the first time somebody introduces me to, say, pizza, okay? Now, we all came into this to this country the first time, or when we came, at that time, pizza was not available in India. And we actually developed a liking for pizza. So the first time when I had that pizza in my mouth, somebody would have told us, oh, this pizza from Pizza Hut is the best pizza, and you should really try it. So psychologically, somebody has already given me a feel that the Pizza Hut pizza is really good. So what happens is, with that in mind, I have the first bite of the pizza. I develop a liking for it. It's not that, I really wanted it or anything, but somebody told me and I developed a liking. So that is the first fall, if you will. Then what happens is, somebody tells me, oh no, Domino's is better. So then I try Domino's, I don't like it, and I come back to Pizza Hut. I have my second bite of my second time, I have the Pizza Hut pizza. So in this sense, the more I attach myself to that particular thing, I develop a liking for it, and that becomes my vasana for that pizza, right? So this is how we get attached. Whereas a tattvavit, or a person who is a knower of truth, tat referring to truth, vit is the person who knows the truth. Such a person recognizes that that pizza, it's not that the person will not have pizza. That is not the case. So we have to be careful on how we understand this. A tattvavit will also enjoy the pizza like us, but the person is very clear that this pizza, if I don't eat with alertness, I can become really attached to this pizza, and finally I will be looking for that pizza all the time. So the tattvavit knows that at the end of the day, the pizza as well as my own, a part of myself, which is the sense organs, the mouth, the mind, the intellect, everything which is going towards a pizza, they are all nothing but the sattva, rajas, tamas, gunas. That's why it says here, guna guneshu vartante. At the end of the day, it's nothing but sattva, rajas, tamas acting in the world of sattva, rajas, tamas. So that person knows it. So that person doesn't get too attached to that pizza for a long time. So that's the idea behind this. Now, of course, we have to take this and see in ourselves how we are a complex, what a bundle of so many such vasanas. Each of these vasanas are either a sattva vasana or a rajas vasana or a tamas vasana. And that vasana is again acting in this world of sattva, rajas, tamas. And that is what is going on all the time. The drama is happening only in this field of the gunas. So that is what was said here. So then we have the shloka number 29, which says, Prakritehe gunasamudhaha sajjante gunakarmasu tan kritsna vidho mandan kritsnavit na vichalayet. Tan akritsna vidha mandan kritsnavit na vichalayet. So here he's comparing that person, the normal person like all of us, who become attached to this world, and then comparing to the person who doesn't get attached. And he's trying to show about how that those of imperfect knowledge should not be unsettled by those of perfect knowledge. So a person who is aware of this truth, such a person should be careful in dealing with people who are very attached to things. So I'm repeating this sentence, which sometimes can be a little shocking, but it basically says that a person who has understood this philosophy, who has understood the philosophy of karma yoga and everything, such a person should not unsettle a person who is already attached to the world. So that is the thing here. Any thoughts on that? Is that understood as to why he's saying that, or why Krishna is giving this advice? It's a very powerful advice here.
So
I
does he
want to
mean
use a
that,
classic. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
does he
Lalita.
mean that, so does he mean like people like Krishna should not look down upon normal people who are attached to things? Is that what
Yeah.
he means here?
Yes, Lalita. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, basically Krishna is telling Arjuna that, hey, Arjuna, I want to give you this advice, that you may think you are so bright and clever and, and you really want to change the world. And all he's trying to show is that, say that be careful on how you approach people who may not necessarily be that worldly, that wise, so to speak. So the idea is that actively, I should not be going about and telling people, hey, this is bad for you, this is good for you. I mean, it's simple thing like, for example, let's take a diet itself, okay? Somebody is really having lots of fried stuff and lots of sugar and everything, okay? Now, I on my own cannot go to that person and say, hey, do you know what you're eating? This is bad for you. That is bad for you. Okay. Now, it sounds shocking. It's like, why shouldn't I say that? We might say that. Why should I not go and tell somebody this is really bad for you? The idea behind here is that somebody who is extremely attached, that is the thing. Somebody who's very attached to something, it is hard to change them by us just telling them. And this is why the shloka number 33, I think, or not 33, 21, 321 is a perfect thing, which is we can only teach people by our own method, us being first practicing it. By our own practice is how we can actually teach people, but I cannot go about and, preach. That's the whole idea here. So he says,
So
do not
basically,
disturb
by
the
example, you're
ignorant
saying.
person. By example, leading by example. Because, so this shloka is trying to show that we all, as living beings, we all have these three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, in different amounts. Some people may have more amount of tamas, some people may have more amount of sattva, right? So we'll be discussing the three gunas, the quality of exactly what it is in the 4th chapter. But all I wanted to say is, when somebody is extremely tamasic, it is hard for a sattvic person to really shake up the person immediately. The only way one can do is slowly bring a tamasic person to a little more rajasic, and then from rajas to sattva. So all this takes a lot of time. So one cannot really disturb a person. So that's why he's saying each person have their own prakriti. Prakriti is their own nature or svabhava, as Amma just mentioned. Okay. So that's why he says, do not disturb the ignorant person. Now, in the next one, which is also, I want to use this as a reflection, is this. I know my internet connection is a little unstable now, right? Or is it okay? Because I got the thing saying that it was unstable. Yeah.
In between a little bit, not too
Yeah.
bad though.
Okay, thank you.
Little bit.
Okay. So here, this is another important shloka, probably the second most, as I said last time too, is it says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashihi nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jvaraha. So over here, this is really the secret of success for everybody. It doesn't matter whether this was for Arjuna, or whether this is for Steve Jobs, or whether it is for, our youngsters coming today. So for everybody, literally, this shloka really applies. All he's trying to is, whenever we are doing any action, let's not worry about, whether I was a failure in the past, or whether whether this thing is going to succeed or not. He's saying, just forget about all that. Just do it. Like Nike's ad, just do it. And he says, by focusing the attention on just the action and totally surrendering my own ego. When I say ego, not ego in a bad sense, but basically surrendering my individuality. If I can do, say, for example, at work, I have a project to do. I'm working in a team, and my boss says, Sunitha, you have to take care of putting this data into Excel or something like that. If I can take the aspect that Sunitha is doing it, I do it because my boss has asked me to do it. I focus my attention on making sure that I put the data into this Excel sheet to the best of my ability. And I do it without thinking whether my boss is going to say I'm doing a great job, or without looking at the fact that in the past I used to do a lot of mistakes. So, I just focus on the job at hand. So that is what is saying nirashihi, which is free from any kind of future praise or anything. And then nirmama is this egoism, as I said, the individuality. And then yudhyasva referring to Arjuna, because Arjuna is a warrior and he's going to fight. And that's why the word yudhya is referred to here. But I can put this here as instead of yudhya, exulting or whatever. And vigata jwaraha is basically indicating that not allowing my mind to go into too many directions, just completely freeing from all that, focusing on this. Let me do the work. And mai sarvani karmani, sarvani meaning all, karmani all actions. Let me just dedicate it to Krishna, saying that Krishna will take care of it. All I have to do is do my job. So then sannyasya means renouncing, basically renouncing any of these three things, what I said. So that is what we, and I know this is meant to be reflection. I kind of got too involved in this, but any thoughts on this that anyone wants to share? Okay. So that is what we said here, these three things. So then the next one's two shlokas, what we covered in the last two sessions almost, was Krishna is now asking us to basically respect this teaching. That's what he's saying. He says that, if you respect this teaching, and he says, and this is something that we always do, right? We always say, okay, we tell our children too, you can question whatever you want. But the whole idea here is it's always good to question, but it is not a good idea to doubt something. The minute, and we'll talk about this, why is it not good to doubt? We have to encourage the questioning all the time. But the minute you start doubting, what happens is that puts a certain blinder to our own intellect. And because of that, we are not open to listening to people. So the other thing is that it's good to be critical, but not to be ever criticizing. So that is the two things that you see is coming up in the shloka. So he says, Ye me matam idam nityam, this teaching of mine, where Krishna is saying, this is my opinion. Actually, Krishna is saying, matam means opinion. It can be construed as religion also. So he says, this opinion that I have, just idam nityam, just keep practicing it. It's only by practice that you can get this knowledge. And do it with full shraddha. Shraddha meaning faith. And I have a couple of slides here to show you what shraddha means. And then na anusuyantaha. That is, which I said, by not criticizing. Of course, question. Of course, critique. Do all that, but don't try to criticize, And he says, if you do it without it, such a person gets freed from actions. And this is important too. And I want to spend a little time on this because last time I think I skipped this line. So we will do that. So those who, who listen to this, you will see that. And I want to show this in a little differently. So today there are so many motivational books, that's what I have, just a picture of often if you go to, of course, nowadays we don't go to Barnes and Noble and all that. But nevertheless, even if you go to the internet, there are so many books which basically just talks about various ways in which we can be successful, and all these are of really great value for us, and it helps us in so many different ways, no question about it. However, what Krishna is saying here is ye me matam idam nityam, which is this one philosophy in this third chapter. If you can just follow it and you just keep practicing in this, what is given in the Bhagavad Gita, that alone will take you completely to moksha. That's what he's saying. So just keep practicing constantly with complete shraddha and faith. And do not put down any of the teaching. Do not criticize. That will take you the state of which is totally free of actions. And what we'll see what that means. Muchyante te api karma bihi. So karma, which is action, muchyante becomes free. They too become free of action and they lead to moksha. So now we need to look at what does that mean? What does it mean that we are freed of action? So if you look at this mechanism of why am I in this world? Why am I doing all these things that I'm doing? You know, whether I'm working towards getting all these material objects or money, or I'm I'm a parent, everything. It goes. This is a little deep here, but just to understand that aspect is because I have no idea. Today, I function as Sunitha, this individual who has this desire for doing so many things or whatever. I'm so convinced that I'm Sunitha. I do not think that I am that absolute reality, that I'm actually of an infinite nature. My true nature is infinite. But I think I'm this finite Sunitha who's 5'5", finite of a certain height, of a certain weight, of a certain thing. I am ignorant of the fact that I am that absolute person, but I think I'm Sunitha. So that's the ignorance aspect. Now, Sunitha has a lot of desires. She has come into this world with all these desires. And those desires lead to, different thought modifications. For example, if I have this desire for a pizza, the thought comes to my mind, and then I finally act to get a pizza. Or if I have a desire to be a scientist, then I put in my effort. All this leads to the action of that, right? So, but then what he's saying is, if a person is completely has that faith and who doesn't, this one, such a person can be completely free of this action. And we will see how that is coming up in the next shloka itself. Okay. So in 32, we really see the role of a human intellect. So far, how this human intellect helps us to be free of actions. Ye tvedadabhyat suyantaha nanutishtanti me matam sarvajnana vimudhanstan tan vidhi mudhanstan vidhi nashtan achetasaha. So basically here he's saying that those people who do not practice this, I mean, this is a pretty strong shloka here. Literally, I mean, Krishna is saying, and I'm sure somebody who is a complete, who has never heard this Bhagavad Gita, and suppose they were listening and today, they'll be saying, what is Krishna telling here? Am I really doomed if I don't practice what Krishna is saying? Because here he's saying, Krishna is saying that if nobody practices this teaching of what I'm saying, then such people are basically known to be doomed. Now, why is he saying that? Let's try to understand that. So you can see this, ye, those who abhyasuyantaha. Abhyasuyantaha, opposite of that suyantaha from the previous shloka, is those people who object to this teaching and they do not follow what I'm saying, this teaching, and they're confused. He says such people are very confused people, and their life is achetasaha. Nashtan, which is ruled, and they are they're not using their intellect. That is what he's saying. So basically he's saying that first, of course, this knowledge needs to be understood completely. Totally, we need to understand why he's saying this. And then he says, you try to follow it. So in this country, we always say this too, right? Which is, what is that? Even if you, what is that? You can, even if you don't, this one, just go with the flow, something like that, I think, which says that even if just because somebody who you respect is saying it, just follow it, then you will be able to understand it. But that is one way. But you have to understand why Krishna is saying this and then follow it. But if you don't, without understanding, if you give it up, then what happens is the intellect is not being used. We are not using this intellect to understand what Krishna is saying. And if I don't use it, then I will never, ever be able to use the intellect properly for the higher purpose. And this is the case even for our kids when you're studying for medicine or engineering or anything. If I'm not constantly questioning it for the right reason, my intellect will never be sharp enough. So that ability to rationalize between, like we say, the right or wrong, real and unreal, temporary and permanent, that's where this Viveka Buddhi is, and that is in the intellect. If I don't use this, then what happens is my ability to develop myself, my ability to transform is not there. And so he says that Viveka Buddhi is not there, and that does not allow me to practice Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga is the only way that I can actually use to eliminate my desires. If you remember that equation, what I showed, ignorance leads to desires, desires lead to thoughts, thoughts lead to action. So Karma Yoga gives me that opportunity. The Viveka Buddhi allows me to show how to work with my desires. And then what happens is, when I do this, my own individuality, my ego, which is what here it means, ego, or whatever that Sunitha wants to do, those things are eliminated, and the work is truly divine, and it will definitely lead to good achievements. So, and then further on, he goes on to show about how if we don't practice this way of doing it, then our Viveka, that our Viveka Buddhi, our intellect, that gets destroyed. And it is this intellect is the only thing that is different between us and animals. That is the only difference. And we need to use that constantly, as Bhagavad Gita says, to distinguish, like I said, between real and unreal, etc. And if he doesn't do this, then such a person really cannot gain any benefit out of this life. And because of that, he destroys himself. And I want to tell you something, a true thing which happened last week. So Ashok and I, we are here in LA, and Ashok's cousin is a doctor, and he actually treats a lot of patients who are into very strong addictions of drugs and alcohol and all of them. And all these patients, so I was just telling him about what we do for Vedanta and everything. And he said, why don't you come and talk to our patients? And this is literally a group of 50 people who are heavy drug addicts and alcohol. And Ashok's cousin had devised a kind of a detox program. And his job is, as a clinical person, he was actually monitoring, all their blood pressure and all that. And he's putting them into a lot of medications so that they don't go back to drugs. And then there was another lady who was actually dealing with more on the soft side, giving them a lot of techniques of meditation and everything. And it's amazing in this place in LA, She is actually using chakra meditation as a full-fledged program to get these kids, to get these patients out of the toxic drugs and alcohol. And this shloka came to my mind, how people are destroying themselves completely when they're not using their intellect to distinguish, this aspect of what I said. The ability to distinguish is not there for them. They have become so much this desire and vasanas have taken up so much of their lives, and there is the viveka is completely lost. Intellect is not even there for them to allow them to transform themselves. So naturally, when such a person, this is why I said finally destroys himself or herself. So you can see extreme addictions does that to people, but doesn't have to be necessarily extreme addictions. Even minor addictions, I guess, of being in the world prevents you from seeing your true nature. So I think Bhagavad Gita is so powerful. If we can just understand the philosophy of it, it helps us to, transform ourselves. So now this brings to the question of, then why do we do, all these things? We may even know this philosophy, but yet why do we continue to do the things? Why do we continue to do what we do? Sometimes it really makes us wonder, right? The various actions that people do. Why are people driving so fast? Or why are people taking those drugs? Why are they taking this alcohol? Why do people act so foolishly? In fact, it's interesting. Some of the statistics are so alarming. The same Dr. Cousin was telling us about how today in schools, high school students, there are apparently about 70% of high school students either drink or take drugs. Vaping and all these drugs are so common these days. And this is in spite of the fact that, we're living in a country which is so high, we call ourselves so intelligent, smart, and everything. Still, this is happening in so much. Why is this happening? It doesn't look like our knowledge is really translating into action, right? So that is what in this shloka here, we're going to see about really what is the difference between willpower and our true nature. So in shloka 33, we see Krishna is saying, Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakrute jnanavan api. So this is the jnanavan api I'm trying to say. We may think we are highly intelligent. We are even, listening to Bhagavad Gita. But why is it that change is not happening? Prakritihi yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Nigraha, which is willpower. Prakriti, which is nature. So he's saying that people, all of them, we all tend to do things based upon our own nature. Every individual is unique in their own way. And he says, even in the case of a wise person, and that is why I use this example of United States, we here, we think we are the smartest nation in the whole world, but we have this high 70% of 70 or even more maybe of high school students going into drugs and alcohol and everything. Why is that happening? Beings will always follow the nature. So what can restraint do? So that's the thing. And this is why last time we stopped at this shloka, this picture, that, when you look at a dog's tail is always curled. And you can try any amount of effort to uncurl it, but one cannot do that. So too, it's our nature. We have come through so many janmas, and we are so stubborn in certain things, right? And it's very hard for us to really change this. And this is why I have this thing here about willpower versus nature. Which one is really stronger? In one survey, actually, this is, again, I'm looking at America. There's a survey which was, these are reports in Stress in America report, where it said that 27% of the people who responded in this survey, they reported that willpower, that a lack of willpower was really the biggest challenge for them. It was the biggest obstacle to change. Now, that seems a little, interesting, isn't it? We actually, rely on our willpower to exercise, to diet, even, save money, quit smoking, drinking. And we use our willpower literally to drive, even say if I'm procrastinating too much, I say, okay, from tomorrow on, I'm not going to procrastinate. So willpower is really the driving force for all of us. Matter of fact, even Mahatma Gandhi, he said our strength, literally our strength, comes from the fact that we comes really not from say physical capacity or something, but it comes from having a very, very strong will. So, and here we have Bhagavad Gita saying that, well, willpower is not the whole thing. So to me, this really is such a powerful thing, because here we have even people, who says willpower is the key to success. And here Krishna is saying, Nigraha kim karishyati. So then what really is the key to success if willpower is not the key to success, right? And that is where Bhagavad Gita is trying to again come back and say that if it is a question of willpower versus prakriti versus nature, then our nature wins. It's not a willpower. It is so hard to change. I guess this is probably also the reason why we see that New Year resolutions fail, right? Within a month or so, we can make any kind of a New Year resolution. But after a month, if I try to monitor myself, I find that I'm not succeeding. So I guess we can take consolation of the fact that, well, this is the way I was all this time. So why am I expecting myself to change dramatically, right? It is essentially nothing but our vasanas, our, the vasanas and the gunas, which is the reason why we find it so hard to change. Going back to the previous shlokas, where I had said that prakritihi, or this whole aspect of sattva, rajas, tamas, they all are the ones which act. Like you can see here, they are the ones which create the senses and which creates the mind, the intellect, and then which leads to all these actions. But it's the vasanas which drives the whole thing. So we are all this bundle of vasanas, because of which, say, for example, if I go for coffee early in the morning, that is because of a vasana. If I like a certain color, that is my vasana. And so these vasanas are the ones that are so entrenched in our mind. They are the subtle impressions, which are jiva, if you will, or a subtle body, which is basically carried from one body to another from our previous janmas. All these things then becomes part of our personality. And that is such a strong force that even a willpower cannot shake it right away, because it's so strong. We have built it. Every action that I do is feeding on to that more and more and more. And that prevents me from making such big decisions to change. So this is the thing that he's trying to show. So then the question is, if everybody is acting only according to that vasanas, their own personality, their own prakriti, like I said, then how did that develop itself? And this is where, like Amma pointed out earlier, it is basically we have strengthened our own personality by allowing ourselves to be guided by only these two forces, of likes and dislikes. And this basically is our really our unique personality. Our unique personality is driven by all this thing, the way we start with the likes and dislikes. Like I said, with this example of pizza, the very first time I really did not know what a pizza is, but I told myself I'm going to like this. Or again, with a dislike, somebody would have told something about somebody, and I may not even have taken the time to know that person, but I would have already developed a kind of a dislike or a hate or whatever. And the more and more I think about the person, the more I start disliking the person. So this is how we have developed our own personalities. So that is the aspect that Lord Krishna now tells Arjuna, that how you developed this personality of yours. And this personality was developed by this thing here, which is indriyasya indriyarthebhyah, indriyasya indriyasyarthe, indriyasya indriyasyarthe, ragadveshau vyavastithau, ragadveshau tayoho na vashamagachet, tau hi asya paripantinau. So indriyasya, that is of the indriyas or the sense organs. We all are blessed with 5 sense organs. Now these sense organs, they are in each and every of the indriyasya arthe, that is, they roam in this world, in this material world of the objects of the particular senses. So for example, my eyes are always looking for particular things to see. My hands always want to touch something really nice. My nose always wants to smell something good. So each of these senses, they're roaming in those objects of senses. And as they do this, they develop raga, which is attachment, dvesha, which is dislike, okay, or going away, vyavastithau, aversion. They either develop an attachment or an aversion. Then tayoho na vasham agachet. So Krishna is warning. He's saying that knowing that this is how the senses and the sense organs work. And of course, we have to be mindful of the fact that here it is not as if it's just the senses acting in the sense objects. It's actually the mind. Because of the mind, the senses, they go towards the sense objects, right? So he's saying, make sure that you are alert. Make sure that you are alert and not allow yourself to be swayed, to be influenced. Tayoho na vasham agachet, because they are tayohi, they are two, asya paripantinau. Paripantina, meaning that they are foes, or here he says highway robbers. They are literally like highway robbers. They literally loot away our discriminative power. So he says, just be very careful of this aspect here. And then the question then comes is, if that is the case, how can I really bring a way in which I am independent of this raga and dvesha? How can I really work on this one? How can, knowing that I am equipped with this mind, which is constantly leaking out through the sense organs for the sense objects. Like, for example, right now the time is 8:30 in Michigan and close to dinner time and everything, even though my mind is in the Sattvic lecture, but on the other side, my mind probably might be swayed by wanting to eat something really nice or whatever, right? But then I can be alert. The aspect of being alert is within myself. So that's the aspect that Krishna is saying, that don't get swayed by the likes and dislikes. So how can I lead a life where I'm totally independent of this? How can I lead a life where I don't allow my vasanas, that is my own impressions from the past, dictating what I should be doing? So that's the aspect we are going to discuss in this next shloka, which is 35. And here, there are some really nice definitions which are coming up for what is dharma, for example. Many times this word dharma, we look at it as my duty, right? It's my duty as a mother to make sure that I take care of my children, or it is the duty of a manager to take care of his team. That's the way we look at dharma. But in our Shastras, dharma is so beautifully defined that dharma means it is the essential nature of that particular thing. So it is actually the nature, it is the essential nature. So for example, we give these examples of how sugar. Now, sugar can come in so many different ways. It can be like rock sugar, brown sugar, white sugar, crystalline sugar, amorphous sugar. But the essence of sugar is nothing but sweetness. So we call the dharma of sugar as being sweet. Similarly, fire, for example, the dharma is to give heat and to give light. Never have we ever heard of a cold fire, right? So that is dharma. So this is the aspect, keeping in mind, let's chant the shloka here. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. Paradharmo bhayavaha. Paradharmo bhayavaha. So again, going back to where we were, the previous shloka, we talked about the fact that we all tend to do what we do based upon our own personality or our own vasana package. So the question was then, how do I really lead a life where I'm not swayed by the likes and dislikes, and where I'm not allowing this vasanas to come up front and to influence me? So Krishna here gives this advice that if I were to follow my own dharma, my own dharma, indicating whatever is what I'm meant to do. So that will let me take care of, that will let me focus on what I have to do, and I will not allow any of my vasanas to dictate me or influence me too much. So that is why he's saying here first that it is important that we follow our own dharma. So there is two words here. One is, he calls this as swadharma, and the other one is paradharma. So many times what happens is we get influenced by somebody doing something, and then I want to do exactly that. So for example, if somebody is, let's take, an example of my child is really wanting to go to the university, and he or she really wants to be an artist and or an architect, because he or she is really loves the arts field. But then I have my own friend's child who is studying very hard to be a doctor. And I see around that most doctors are extremely well off. They live in great houses. And within a few years, they've already earned enough money. They lead a great life. And now I want to see how my child can be influenced towards going towards that profession, right? So that's what here he's trying to say, that paradharma is others' nature. Swadharma is my nature, or my vasanas, or my skill set. So he's trying to say that it is better to follow my own nature, whatever my skill set is. I need to follow that, because that alone will lead me to getting rid of my own negative vasanas and to have a control over my own likes and dislikes, rather than following somebody else's nature. So better is one's duty, even though it may not be the most, here he says merit, meaning that, though this may not give me the most fame and glory, etc., that is much, much better than taking up than the duty of another person's, even though I may be working very hard to do it well. So better is death in one's own duty. The duty of another is fraught with fear. So that is the thing here. And so I just have a few slides here, which today in the Facebook page of Swami Chinmayananda, this came up, and I thought that was so appropriate to this shloka here. So the topic is, how you can know your own aptitude. And that is what he's saying here, this swadharma, indicating that what is my aptitude and how can I use that to the best advantage and excel. So many times we really do not know which path is right for us. But here he's trying to show that this, by following our own swadharma, that will take us to happiness. So he says, choose an area of work where one can give our best. And this is possible only if I know what skills I have, what the environment that I'm growing in, and with this, I'll be able to give my own best, right? So he says each one is ordered by his own aptitude, and in this case, like we said, the vasanas, and every person can discover only for themselves what that field of activity is. And as an example of Napoleon, he says, Napoleon was asked to tend his sheep, but he knew that he couldn't do that. So he reached Paris and he became one of the greatest people in the world, which is, he was Napoleon. So it's no use to employ our minds in the field that are contrary to our nature. Again, paradharma, swadharma and paradharma. You can see how beautifully it lines to this shloka here. He says it's no use to employ a mind in the field that are contrary to the nature. Each one has an importance and none is to be despised, for each can do things that others cannot do so well. And there is no redundancy in the Lord's creation. Not a single blade of grass is unnecessarily created. You can see this. So, in a sense, the only way to to lessen amount of our own likes and dislikes, and to make sure that we excel in what we do, we follow our own swadharma and not the paradharma, which is the things which is not really my skill set. I just focus on what I have to do. So that was the shloka number 35. And then in shloka number 36, Arjuna, for the first time now, after the first two shlokas in the beginning of the chapter, right? He now wants to know that why do we go through this struggle then? On one hand, I have these vasanas which is pulling me down and everything. How can I really try to, stop them? How can I not create more negative things for myself? For example, if I'm a smoker, how do I break this habit of smoking? By continuing to smoke and ruining my health, I'm really creating so much more, quote unquote, negative tendencies. So how can I really be away from that? So the next 5 shlokas, which is actually the last part, the last section in this chapter, is about really having a hold on these desires or vasanas. So we will do that next time. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Hari Om Suvarna. Hari Om. Hari Om Lalita.
Thank
If you have
Hari
any
Om.
questions, please feel free to send and I will try to answer. Okay. See you then.
Thank you, Sunitha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Madhu.